predictably, the American response to shoegaze tracks along college towns. So you have Ann Arbor, you have College Park, Maryland, you have obviously Boston. Those towns are the ones that have the record stores that will order records from, indie labels in America, like Slumberland, which is really the outstanding forerunner here. And from England as well, Creation and everything going on over there. They're getting the imports, and the record store clerks are hip to what's going on abroad and nationally with low-level underground music. Prior to the noise rock that sort of explodes coming out of 1985, 1986, this is when Sonic Youth releases Evil, Dinosaur Jr. releases You're Living All Over Me, and then you have the Jesus and Mary chain being like a national media phenomenon because of, hyping and Alan McGee's, slick moves with the press. That sort of fuels what's going on over there. There, the noise is about rebellion, and here, the noise is a rebellion in America against the just totally polished, boring music that's on the radio. And Sonic Youth really were the flag bearers for this, and it shaped the way things went from then on out. In the Pacific Northwest, as far as the underground goes, you'd had K Records, and that was really the biggest thing that happened. After the initial punk rock stuff of SST and Discord and the original early 80s first independent labels in America, in 84, 85, Calvin Johnson is releasing, cassettes of Beat Happening. And he sort of becomes a major mogul for young kids and independent music in the Pacific Northwest. And he starts traveling incessantly and making sure these tapes get out and mailing them all over the place. His hyperactivity, his obsessiveness, and his passion for making sure that music gets to people and gets across the country and gets international. He went to Tokyo, with just a phone number in the 80s. I mean, it's wild. Because something like Discord is very much about control and who your friends are and your local scene and getting involved. All, very valid, very respectable pursuits. Discord's always brought up as, the big, great, good guy in this discussion. But what Calvin was doing was meeting people. It was social. That's the weird thing about K, is that K was so much more about meeting people, forming relationships, and creating a social network. Discord was not about that at all.
Don't fucking kick people and don't punch people. I'm talking to you right there, alright? I'm talking to you and you. You want to fucking do that shit? Get the fuck up on the football field, alright? I'm talking to you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Yeah, that's right.
In college towns in America where these record geeks are clocking Echo and the Bunnymen and this British stuff, those kids form bands like O Positive in Boston was probably the biggest of the Anglophile, pop bands at that time. And there are just dozens and dozens of these bands that were just treading water in college towns in the 80s without a lot of ambition. A few of them, got it together and got signed to deals. There was one band in particular in Texas called Caterwaul that was really outstanding at this time. They got signed to IRS. And they actually had a pretty successful video that got a lot of attention in a kind of a, radical video production kind of a way where it was made out of photocopies and still frames. Because REM had signed to Warner Brothers and there was something of an REM twang to O Positive, they got signed to a huge deal, I believe on Epic Records. Wasn't huge financially, but it was huge in terms of the amount of money and commitment that the label made to them. They thought they had a huge crossover hit in Imagine That. It did get played pretty heavily on MTV, but it really didn't take off. Fall around like sounds we know and brother, when imagine that black is black, imagine that in your... The best song on the record really was the first song, Overflow, and that's the one I still go back to all the time. But they were all recording kind of middle of the road, mannered guitar pop at that time. And it wasn't that exciting. The idea of alternative as something like 4AD, where it's very heavy and gothic, and the graphic design is overbearing, and it's like a brick. After the Throwing Muses, Pixies, and even His Name Is Alive get scooped up, it was like Evil Watch Russell was just playing darts and throwing them at college towns. It was really strange. So you've got twee going on, you've got punk and hardcore, you've got noise for the sake of noise in sort of, Sonic Youth and Jesus and Mary Chain. You've got aggressive, now new fuzz rock that's much heavier and louder. And all of that sort of points up that there's a different way to go for new bands that are starting. It's not just, add reverb. It's a whole sound that you can put together that allows you to mimic the records that you're listening to. That's all most of this is ever about. You're trying to make music that sounds like the music that you like. So once you hear My Bloody Valentine, you want to do that, but it turns out to be really difficult. So, for example, Lilies, a band I never really liked, on their first record, Kurt tries to replicate My Bloody Valentine's sound by literally detuning the strings on his guitar. So it just sounds like this cacophony of dying, conflicting, bending notes. Instead of, the unity, which was the secret to My Bloody Valentine's sound, of having the strings tuned together and bending them with your fingers and the whammy bar in different order. So that way you're creating a real swimming kind of a sensation when you have two strings in tune. You bend one with your finger, leave the other one alone, use the whammy bar. Now you can really create a live kind. It's almost like DJing. It's like scratching with a guitar. That's not something that Kurt figured out for Lilies. And I like the first record. It is good. Even by XMA, the Photon Band, by the second record, it's sort of obvious that Kurt is really just an ideas guy. And that he hears bands he likes and he hears sounds he likes, and then he tries to make the same sound himself. Which is cool, but it's a little bit academic to me. I just was never into Lilies. But Lilies were there at the start, and they're one of the first American shoegaze bands, and there's no arguing it. So one half of shoegaze is really guitar pedal rock, where it's like you're just putting as many effects and ridiculous, swooshing, laser shot guitar sounds as you can in your recording. The other side is the one where it's about the emotional character of the music. And it's very downbeat, but it's also kind of like dreamy and blissful and romantic. The American shoegaze bands, it wasn't just about stomp boxes. It was really about like noodling around and being clever, because most of these were smart, young, possibly overeducated college kids. And so that piece of it, the piece of, creating the overload, the sound and the number of changes and moves, that sort of intellectual entertainment, that really wasn't there in the UK bands. Drop 19s, Swirlies, Velocity Girl, Black Tambourine before them. These are all just college bands. Velocity Girl played some huge shows. They got kind of as big as you could get as an alternative band who had come out of a college scene.
to what we got. Make it blue in a real life. Just how far away she's gone from me. Ever since I
Swirlies pretty quickly got signed to the biggest indie in Boston, Tang. Tang was a punk label, a hardcore label, really, by that time. And nobody could really figure out why they were signing Swirlies.
So we started playing Our Lips Are Sealed, and we became the Swirlies.
Can you hear them? They talk about us, telling lies. Well, that was the price. Can you see them? See right through them.
It just worked out that this anomaly on Tang was Swirlies, the greatest American shoegaze band we ever got. But that didn't work out so well for the Swirlies. How'd you end up on Tang? Because, like, it's like Sam Black Church. Sam Black Church, Swirlies.
Lemonheads. If someone went to Curtis and said, hey, we want to reissue the Swirlies, Laundry Town, out of time, then he would make all the money, basically. Yeah. And then, like, 4AD was very interested, and we were just like, but knowing what our contract was, they said no thank you. Yeah, the tour was probably summer in '93. And then I started writing songs. Damon was writing more songs for salons, and you know, my songs just didn't seem to be Swirly songs, so. It's kind of amazing, you know, because now you just have to pay for yourself and hope that someone puts it out for you. But there was so much money involved with indie bands. So. we played a lot with Velocity Girl, you know, because we got each other from the get-go, like in 1990. Like, you know, we were both kind of doing the same guitar sounds and, you know, male, female vocals and stuff. So, you know, we got it. It was 12 noon on the side stage, and then Cell played at was like, I don't know who Sel is. And then the Royal Tracks were there, like that chick. She's like dead cool, right? Just standing there. I was like, I don't know what to do. So I went and bought a dress and, a hippie dress to wear.
It looked good. So Mercury Rev weren't there. They were supposed to be. They got kicked off the tour.
That sucked.
That's why I went. It was you guys and Mercury Rev.
That's probably why we were ready to play the reset. On the side stage at noon. We knew it was different, for sure. We didn't know it was shoegaze. But as soon as someone said shoegaze, we were like,